all. Yeah, sorry it's been a while since I've done a vid, almost a week in fact, but I didn't have anything interesting to say, or at least I don't think so. And the stuff that is interesting for people to listen to, watch or do is kind of interesting in and of itself, hopefully. So first off, a load of people watched the last video compared to normal, which is really great. Thank you very much for anybody that watched it, spread it around. I shall try and keep this one equally as brief. So what have I been doing with my time? So I've done practical and impractical things. So the practical stuff is getting a little vegetable garden started, because it really doesn't matter if you've got a big garden or just a window box. If you know how to grow, if you know how to look under a branch properly, if you know how to grow plants and vegetables and stuff, then you're in an advantage. You should do it a lot, because it's a way of unpicking a little bit of control. So yes. So impractically, I've been watching a lot of stuff about ancient Rome, particularly the last couple of hundred years of it. And it was eerily relatable, shall we say. And I say eerily relatable because you see all the same things, all the same human drives, and it's the first time in history where people really started to write stuff down. Literacy was at an all-time high. Now arguably that level of literacy led to the fall of Rome. If you think about it, the first letters to be passed around, most people could, some people could read, but not just the very, very wealthy. So language expanded out. And it has to be said, when the Romans conquered Greece had a very high level of literacy, and so because Romans did not want to appear to be more poorly educated than their slaves, the literacy rate went up, and people could exchange stuff and tell other people what was really going on. So yeah. And also the rather hideous levels of decadence that punctuated the falls from grace of various people. And by decadence I don't mean any smear on LGBTQ people. I've no problem, never have. Check out all my other media. Seriously, no problem with people being of different orientations. That's not what I mean by decadence. I mean so much money that the super wealthy have nothing more to do with their time than to intentionally see what they can get away with, to do things that they stand up for and against in their public life, and then in their private life in a completely hypocritical way abuse people a lot, specifically those of lower the people that aren't as important as they feel they are. But yeah, so that's interesting. So that shit, especially the things like all the stories about Jeffrey Epstein being involved with all the sort of super important people in the world and procuring for them, and selling people into human bondage for mostly sexual reasons. But what else is there when you can just pay someone to do whatever you want for them? You don't really need slavery if you can buy and sell humans on the quiet. So yeah, so that's really interesting. It's specifically underage people being sold, and it's not just women, it's men as well. And that got me to thinking, about where historical misogyny might come from. And I've got a sneaky suspicion that if you're super sensible about transition of property, you probably transfer it in the matrilineal line, because males are slightly more expendable, but also because if it passes down the matrilineal line, there's absolutely no ifs, ands, buts or maybes about at least 50% of the parentage, and that 50% of the parentage being the 50% that inherits land. This would have made women pretty powerful. So if anybody had done the maths in early times, as soon as this whole land ownership thing started up, then yeah, if you can imagine a pre-patriarchal society where women held on to the land and the more expendable men went out to defend it, which from various historical sources we know that those were the most long-lasting civilizations pre-Roman. And then you understand that, you know, once you do take control of the land as a patriarchal society, you don't know who's inheriting it. So this, I think, looks like it was the major cause of historical patriarchy. You know, if you've recently taken over land ownership, you want to be absolutely certain it's your child that inherits it when you die, because religion and stuff. And you then got to keep the women that are in control of, you know, the patriarchal lineage of your children under lock and key. Once there is value to keeping them such, commodifying women and commodifying daughters in particular, because they're not going to inherit, and because that's what the wealthy people are doing, it becomes the fashion and the expectation and a sort of uplift if you're very short-sighted. So yeah. Whew. So an awful lot of bad stuff came out of that. And then the fun bit, nothing's changed. Not in about 2,000 years. Whereas certain things appear to have gone by the wayside, we've still got misogyny and slavery, weirdly. Our only technological progress comes from war, space travel, the internet, electronics, medicine. It's not much of a legacy. It's going to be something we're going to have to justify for many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands, that our creep into space, if we have to go talk to artificial intelligences or whatchamacallit, aliens, any civilization that comes along. And the downside is, by the very way we exist, we kind of support it. That's why I'm big on recycling stuff. It speaks to two parts of me. I inherit fiscal tightness. I don't like to spend a lot of money on kit. And the fact that these things will be landfill. So, yeah. We have to unpick ourselves from parts of this very destructive regime that we've got on our hands planet-wide, because they do all get together and talk. They have a little chat about how us working class people are going to get to live, which is why for, you know, thousands of years people have been talking about a citizen's basic income, like a bare minimum, which we sort of have in the form of welfare, but that's really because people were starting to not stand for it. And if you ever want to make meaningful change, all it takes is the fear of the mob, as in Julius Caesar's day. The roadmap to end COVID is being accelerated because of fear of the mob. And it's a right-wing mob this time. You don't see left-wing people sort of like refusing to wear masks or refusing vaccines, or, you know, having protests during a pandemic. You don't see any of that. So when the right-wing mob speaks in this country, and probably in the United States, governments tremble, because right-wing people, if you ultimately believe in fascism, you surrender your life to be a cog for the state, and then various interests in the state use that and get you killed or maimed or wounded or imprisoned to save them the bother. because, you know, it's absolute, under a fascist dictatorship, absolute power is definitely up for grabs. And the Romans made it last, you know, a long, long, long time. Don't know how long. It's at least 500 years. Where the technology didn't move along very much because there weren't that many creative people. So yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, definitely watch either Rome or I, Claudius, and you'll get what I mean. They were very much into grabbing absolute power, intimidating one another until that absolute power could be achieved, utilising the power of the mob. Several Roman emperors did that, you know. So did Trump, so did Boris. The power of the mob. So not much has changed, but, you know, isn't it interesting that I don't remember being taught that at school, how Roman politics worked, because it's pretty much the same as today, and getting more so. You know, in the Queen's speech in the UK, they announced that there would be a requirement for photographic ID if you wanted to be able to vote in the next general election, similar to what they're doing in America, similar to the demands of Donald Trump, you know, a way of making poor people choose between the family eating and one of them being able to vote. You know, it's not like you'll automatically be issued with photo ID, and that would be bad enough. You know, having to be in a position where you can properly identify yourself to the authorities whenever they feel like asking. You know, that sounds like a very bad deal for whoever's on the receiving end of, you know, right-wing justice, I guess. So yeah, so that's got mission creep written all over it. The other thing in the Queen's speech was a relaxation on planning laws, just after there's been a ruling in the High Court that the people who are terrified of flammable cladding that's been put on without their request on the high-rise buildings that they live in, and the Tory government has encouraged them to own their own homes, and that's the culture we live in now, which certainly wasn't the case when I was younger. But if you think about it, that more or less frees up people who are planning to build on land that wasn't designed for housing or office buildings, or, you know, they can put any kind of flammable crap they want on it. They don't have to apply for as much planning permission. So that just serves to make rich people more wealthy. And to put it in perspective, the people that have to pay cladding, the combined bill for replacing all the dangerous, flammable, illegal cladding in the flats in the country is deemed to be around 40 billion. And the people who own those flats, free leasehold, I might add, they're not like, it's not like a house where you fully own it and the ground it's on. These people still have to pay a ground rent, and now have to find maybe up to 20 to 40,000 pounds each in order to remove dangerous substandard cladding while those companies carry on. I mean, there are cases of, since the Grenfell fire in London, again, look it up, the Grenfell Tower fire, where many people lost their lives due to dangerous cladding that was fitted due to wealthier residents in the same area complaining about the look of the building, so it was clad as quickly as possible, and a wealthy person made that happen. Another wealthy person made a bunch of money on it, and some poor people died. Check it out. So yeah, but these things, these, like the grand public works, we've got the high-speed rail network that's being rushed through, even though none of the people that are pushing it through will use that train. They will benefit hugely from enforced land sales, government purchase orders. Everybody stands to make billions. And that's the problem when you've got just wealthy people in the cabinet. Most of the MPs that you look at, most of the people that are on television telling you how it's all going to be great, are already amazingly wealthy anyway. You know, with the exception of Boris Johnson. And it works for the wealthy people that Boris Johnson's hurting for money, because he's able to rush all kinds of shit through. You know, as corrupt as Cicero in the era of Julius Caesar. Seriously, you can watch all of that. In fact, watch Rome first, and then if you watch I, Claudius second, you've got a continuous history, and nothing much changes. When anybody does try and do a good thing, they're quickly murdered and got out of the way. Yeah, sorry Jeremy. Like Jeremy Corbyn, somebody that just wanted to, you know, in the Roman sense of the term, a Republican. There's no point being xenophobic and arrogant about your species if there's nothing to be arrogant about. You know, and in the 1920s they talked about the citizens' dividend, where everybody would get a share of the country's wealth as it was made. And that was at a time when we had an empire, and that was roundly shouted down. Then there was the general strike, when the wealthy people realised that they were in a lot of trouble if poor people just decided not to go to work for a couple of weeks. Everything grinds to a halt. You know, I think there should be a general strike every year, just to remind people. That'd annoy everybody to an extent where they'll start asking it. Unfortunately, we've got some decent human beings in government. How far they'll get, I don't know. But local councils, including where I live, is talking about trialling universal basic income, although that's still a cop-out, because where we try it, it works. You know, worked in France, worked in Canada. Everybody gets wealthier, and despite what any Tory politician might say, all that money kind of funnels back into the public purse. Because what do most people do when they get money? They spend it. You know? Saves an awful lot of money and hassle. But, you know, employers would then have to justify the payment that they're giving to people who work for them. And if you had universal basic income and everybody decided to work part-time because it meant for a better home-family balance, you know, there'd be twice as many jobs. You know, fewer people to fill them. Probably make people a bit less xenophobic. So yeah, and given that people are wealth, that's never changed. So yeah, go and check out the Roman Empire. I'll include a little bit of film footage of my micro garden so you can have a look. And here's a quick look at my micro garden that's growing me some veg. So we have carrots, cauliflowers and onions in there, all recycled containers, and tomatoes in there, they've taken a while to start up, and basil and little gem lettuces. So as soon as these become big enough plants, they'll be transferred to actual plant pots, but as a nursery, just to get the plants germinated, this is working out really fine. These are just cheap plastic crates I had knocking around, and everything else I've taken from single-use plastics. So yeah, so thanks very much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the bit on the garden and enjoying this wander through the woods. But yeah, it was time I had another rant. Thank you to everybody that watched the last video and commented. It's much appreciated. Yeah, go for it. But do go and watch the TV series Rome. There's 2 seasons of that, and there's 12-hour-long episodes of I, Claudius, which was produced by the BBC in 1975. And you may recognise quite a few of the people, especially if you're a sci-fi fan. Loads of people from sci-fi movies and TV shows and that. Go check it out. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you again. It was amazing to see a video go, you know, to 35 views in only a couple of days. Thank you so much. It's, even though there shouldn't be any ego about this, it does make you feel good when a lot of people, or more people than you're expected, watches the video. So thanks for watching. Do take care. Remember, end greed, end poverty, end hate, or we all die. Ciao for now.